Walking Dead.
Yes. Woo. So where's my little thing to advance the...
Gordon's...
Where's the clicker?
Is this it here?
Yep, that's it.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I had the microphone with me the whole time, and when Jacob was talking, I was going to go, Jacob. It's going to turn to my heckle.
Is there a ghost in the house?
So everybody can hear me, I take it, right? So welcome to Getting Into Bed with an IP licensor. I cannot claim credit for that title. Yetizen came up with it. I put it up on my blog to advertise this talk, and I have to admit I got a lot of clicks, and I think it has to do with the SEO optimized title there. Yes. And so yes, so that's me. Some of the letters are getting cut off, but it doesn't really
We'll get that fixed right now.
matter. Although it's on video, so I might too. So I grabbed some slides from previous presentations, and I made some, so forgive me if it's all very self-aggrandizing here, but that's me. I'm Margaret Wallace. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called Playmatics, and here's the logo. It's very blurry for all of you to see. I made this presentation myself, and we're headquartered in New York City, and I am the lone person out in San Francisco. In New York City, we're about 10 people. And in San Francisco, it's just me now. I found that I was commuting every month to San Francisco for meetings, and so the excuse I give for being in the Bay Area is because of all the meetings, but it's just because the weather is better and it's more fun.
No, all you need is an office.
Yes, I know, exactly. And Playmatics, just really quickly, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do and then get more into the brands and how we work with different kinds of brands and IP. But we've been around since 2009, and we really focus on, obviously, entertainment, education, healthcare. We just were accepted for our first neurogaming project. We're going to be working on an NIH funded grant with these neuroscientists around something super cool. And then, for better or for worse, we've been doing a lot of work inside of gamification. And my co-founder is Nick Fortuno. He's based in New York City, and he's probably best known as having been the original designer of Diner Dash. And we do a lot of public speaking, and we also are affiliated with a lot of great organizations, including Yetizen, and then also in New York City, we're...
What do you do with those guys, the Yetizen guys?
Oh, the Yetizen. We are, well, I'm a mentor for Yetizen, and I speak a lot every chance I get, and I love meeting the new people, the new class that comes in. And back in, I think October, we were named as institutional partners for the IFP Made in New York Media Center. And so this is a Mayor Bloomberg sponsored initiative. It's very unusual for New York City to create a startup space. It's devoted to gaming and so-called transmedia storytelling. And so if anybody's in New York City, it's an open space and has worked a 100-person theater, so definitely please feel free to stop by. It's in Dumbo, Brooklyn, and that will be the site of our new office in October. And since the very beginning of my career, I've been working a lot with brands, both original and licensed IP. And these are some of the partners that Playmatics has worked with since we've been around in business. And as you can see, you know, there are even some that are missing, but it ranges from public institutions to consumer video sites like Smosh.com to, I've left some of the Disneys off. We've worked with the Epcot Center, and we've worked with BBC and the American Red Cross, and I consider all these working with IP and brands one way or another.
What did you do with the Federal Reserve?
So the Federal Reserve Bank.
If she tells you, she'll have to kill you.
They were investigating doing a game to teach people about how the economy works and how money gets made and all this.
They couldn't figure it out, so they described it.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell you how to make it.
So
that didn't have anything to do with 2007 when happened.
Well, I'm sure it was the aftermath. It was right around the time of Occupy Wall Street, so we would go to the Federal Reserve headquarters on Liberty Street, and the people we were hanging out with were like staring at the Occupy Wall Street people, very fascinated by it. And, the Federal Reserve has these bomb-proof curtains, so they were like looking through the bomb-proof curtains, very interested. But it was through our work with AMC Television where we did a couple projects with Walking Dead IP, just an interactive comic. And here's another one we did with Breaking Bad, and this one won an award, a Cable Fax Award. These are really small games. These are where we were just basically brought on as contractors. So it was one example of ways we work with licensors. And then we worked with The Walking Dead. This when it was released, was in the top of Android charts for several weeks in a row. Of course, we didn't find this out until like a year after the game launched. Nobody bothered to really tell us. But that's a whole other thing I'm going to be talking about in a second, about what it's like to work with brands.
Oh boy.
But because of that work, we were able to build our own platform for quickly iterating on interactive comics and e-comic games. We're calling it Playmatics, and it's cross-platform. And these are just some of the features, but it was through our work with AMC Television and our learnings around how to do episodic content and content that kind of has like a comic book component that gave us a launching pad for building our own internal technology and resources. And I know that's something that all of us who are in startups have had to do one way or another, is just build on expertise using opportunities like this that come your way. And so at Playmatics, the way we work with brands, we work either as a licensor, so I'll explain what that is in a second really quickly. We work as content partners, we work in the capacity as brand representatives, in the capacity of original IP, and then working with different brand holders around their strategy. And so as a licensor, for example, recently we worked with the Untouchables brand, and we were essentially sub-licensors, but that's how we do that. As a content partner, it might be on the low end, a work-for-hire project, or hopefully something more entrepreneurial where we're co-developing with a partner. And original IP, that's either us creating our own brands and working to have that distributed, so that's sort of like indie publishing. But also we have large brand holders come to us and say, hey, there's this famous person, or maybe not so famous person, who has a new IP that's coming out. It's going to be an animated series. Can you handle the gaming part of it? And so we really get to work at the ground level on some pretty cool top secret stuff. Very high risk, high reward. A lot of it never comes to fruition because when you're at this level, it can be very speculative, but that's another way in which we work with brands. And as a representative of brands, and as a brand rep, that means, so for a while I was actually representing the Walking Dead license, so that was a whole other capacity where I had to take the license and look for developers and publishers to publish games for Xbox and whatever, Facebook and whatever other opportunities are out there. And then as a brand strategist, I did that a lot with A&E Television Networks, where they had a bunch of brands like Pawn Stars and stuff like that, Duck Dynasty and Paranormal State, and like, what do you do with those? And so that's kind of the range of experience that I'm bringing to the table today when I speak with all of you right now about brands. And so I just thought it might be useful to kind of put together some sort of truths and observations that I've kind of collected over the years of working in all these various capacities. They're in no particular order. But first of all, it's fun and rewarding to work with high-profile IP. There's something really cool and exciting about, for example, I'm not saying we're working with Neil Gaiman, but like somebody of that caliber who's doing something really fantastic, and you get to see their scripts ahead of time, and you get to kind of be on the creative ground floor. Or in the case of The Walking Dead or The Breaking Bad, we got to work with actual writers from the shows to create the scripts, and it's awesome. And in fact, I was listening to the Breaking Bad Insider podcast, and the guy we worked with, Gordon, was on the podcast who even mentioned the games he did with us, even just the other day. And these games are little tiny things, but just got a lot of attention. But it's also just as hard to make your own IP as branded IP. So I don't think the effort, if you're doing what you're doing the right way, is any easier working with a great brand than it is creating your own IP. So you really have to weigh the pluses and minuses in terms of whether it's worth it to work with a brand or not. And there's just as much variability in the upside, and I'll go into that a little bit later, but the old adage, and there's a reason why a lot of people in gaming have a really unfriendly attitude sometimes towards brands and working with licensors, is it's just a dog-eat-dog world. The bottom line, the upside just isn't as great. Sometimes working with licensors can really stink sometimes, and so why not just put all of that effort and focus into making your own IP, where you don't have to worry about licensors and territories and all of that. So definitely something to consider. I would say in terms of working with brands and licensors, I mean, it's a cliche, like relationships are key, but it's so true with when you're working with these licensing partnerships, because, for example, I happen to know of a really high-profile gaming company that has done episodic content, really successful. They work with a brand, I can't say who it is, and it was like kind of easy peasy for them. They were doing really well, and now they have a new piece of content with another brand licensor coming out, and they're late, and they're having all these troubles, and you would think, given all they learned with all their early success with this other brand property, it would just transfer to this new project. But that doesn't happen because, well, it turns out their licensors are crazy, and they're having them change, oh, make all the blues pinks and make all the greens, plaid, or just crazy requests that they could have maybe been better at anticipating and kind of, not getting into this situation, but it can happen. If it happened to them, it can happen to any of us. There are more licensing deals out there than ever. In fact, I'm really surprised at how little we exploit available licenses when we think about all of the opportunities there are to get licenses. Dead licenses and living licenses, so dead licenses like Strawberry Shortcake, just as one off the top of my head, that's a dead license. Or another one that I would have tried to get a hold of, which was Tales from the Crypt. I was like, resurrect Tales from the Crypt, that would be brilliant. And but even living licenses, obviously not Game of Thrones, but stuff that's around, you can sometimes get that for little or no money down. You can sometimes say to a licensor, hey, I don't want to give you a single dime for your tired old Strawberry Shortcake license, but I'll give you 5 or 10% royalties in the back end. And in the old days, like 2 or 3 years ago, that was a much harder deal to make. These days, those deals are really out there. If you look, and I think there's a reason that we don't take advantage of a lot of these brand opportunities, and it's because it takes a long time to find a decision maker sometimes when you're getting IP or brands, and it also takes a long time to do these deals. Sometimes you can do them in a week or two, sometimes it takes a year, and it's just really variable, and depending on who you're working with, they can be really annoying and stupid. You can have somebody really waste your time, and they really have no decision-making power whatsoever. And when I was working as representing brands, where I spent 10 months working for the BBC last year, a lot their Doctor Who game property, and 9 times out of 10, licensors, especially these days, especially in light of the Zynga IPO not going so great and changes going in social gaming, they're a lot more risk adverse these days. And so licensors 9 times out of 10, all things being equal, will try to find a partner who can take on most of the risk and cost for development. And there are certainly exceptions to that rule, and there are a lot of licensors who will do co-development deals or who will pay for 100% of development outright. But right now, the climate is very risk adverse, and you see even companies like Disney moving more and more towards licensing models. And brand recognition, I think this was said previously by the previous speaker, may help in user acquisition, especially on mobile, but it only goes so far if the gameplay just doesn't match the user expectations. And I've noticed another trend. We're doing a lot more work in, I mentioned neurogaming, but also serious games these days. There's a lot of opportunity. Surprisingly, I've never really been that interested in serious games, but it pays the bills, and I'm noticing a lot more popular brands being integrated with educational games more than ever, and I think that trend is only going to increase, even with like new IP. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an educational game based on the Hunger Games, just for example. And then stuff like making sure that you have your credits or, you know, metrics, something I referenced earlier, like how did I know that Walking Dead game, you know, because you didn't control the distribution in that case. How did I know that it was down